but I know he could kick your ass.
Oh, he definitely can, and I'd like that.
I like Brandon more than Alex anyway, so. What?
It's fine.
I just don't like Hell or High Water, though. That's some grade A shit. Have you listened to it?
I have not.
Okay, I'm telling you, it's like straight up cheese metal. It's not even metal, it's just like cheesy hard rock.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with like...
No, it's poorly done.
There's nothing wrong with extra cheese.
It's really badly done.
I'm never like, hey, we're gonna make you this we're gonna make you this taco, but we're gonna add extra cheese to it. I'm not like, oh no, you know what?
No, if you want
it all sounded really good till you said something about that extra cheese.
No, if you want extra cheese and it actually be good, it's called the Night Flight Orchestra.
It's called Dream Theater.
Have you not listened to Night Flight Orchestra yet?
No, I have not.
Oh.
And if you believe the cheese is strong with this one, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Jeff, and Space Dust is strong with this one. I'm a Newcastle kind of guy myself.
It's so hoppy.
And I'm drinking water.
I'm
weak.
He's drinking PBR. It's,
No, that'd be piss.
It's
water.
good, though.
Oh, yeah. It has a bit of a rubbing alcohol flavor to it.
You know what would be better, though? Would be cheese.
Yes.
Cheese beer.
Cheese beer?
Is there such a thing as cheese beer? Or I thought that was just fondue.
If there is, you can send them to the Discography Discussion headquarters.
Dude, there's like bacon beer and all kinds of shit. So, yeah. It's
Email me at danandjoeshow.com or danandjoeshow@gmail.com and let me know about the cheese beer, and I will order a case.
Yeah, especially if we can get it in the Midwest, we will buy it, and we'll try it on the show and get shit-faced on it.
Absolutely.
And then do an episode.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be fun.
So you can send us that, too. You know.
Send us a tweet if you want to have a beer podcast done by the Discuss Metal guys.
No, I mean send us the beer.
Well, yeah. I mean,
you have to start with the beer, Jeff.
That's kind of a given, right? But, So tonight we're talking about Haste the Day.
Haste the Day.
Speed the Day, right? Is that what Haste is? Like, you cast Haste. You cast Haste in Final Fantasy and you speed up.
Oh, speed! I thought we were talking about solo work there for a second.
Oh.
The definition of haste is excessive speed or urgency of movement or action. Hurry!
Which is funny because, really, Haste the Day isn't like the fastest band I've ever heard, because that's Slayer, right?
They're definitely not in a hurry to be anywhere.
No, but you know what? That's okay.
If you want to haste the day, just get older and have kids, and
right. Or maybe it's like rush through the day so you can listen to Haste the Day.
Rush. San Francisco Rush?
So, in my unending quest to talk about every solid state band at some point, Haste the Day is really up there. They are a metalcore band. I don't remember where they're from because Wikipedia is a thing and my phone's at the other side of the room.
I think they're Indiana.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, and even though I have my phone out, it's on Spotify.
I was just in Indiana a while back.
Yes, you were.
And it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, Haste the Day, man. Like, we talk about a lot of like thrash bands and death metal bands, and we don't really talk about black metal. Maybe we will one day, but not this. It is not this day. So we're gonna talk about metalcore. Haste the Day is kind of the I don't know, Jeff. Would you say that they're kind of like the definition?
Yeah, I was gonna call them a standard bearer, but definition works too.
Yeah, standard bearer is good. I mean. Haste the Day, I mean, if you have never heard metalcore before, and you have, whether you think you have or you haven't, you've heard it. If you've heard As I Lay Dying or Killswitch Engage or Unearth, you've heard metalcore. But Haste the Day really bears that torch, and they bared that torch in 2004. Starting out, probably have been around since before that, but their debut album was in 2004, and they played metalcore, and they played it really well, and they continued to play it really well all the way through 2015, which is cool. I mean, that's 11 years, man. That's that's a long time to be dedicated to that cause.
Well, they did take a bit of a break there right around 2011.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. So they broke up in 2011, which we'll talk about.
Because that is a live album that everybody should hear.
Oh yeah. Haste the Day versus Haste the Day. Solid gold.
All right, before we go any further, I want to go ahead and say thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on iTunes. We are on Google Play. We are on Stitcher. We are on TuneIn Radio. So if you have an Amazon Echo product, you can say to it, Alexa, play the latest episode of Discography Discussion, and she will. We're also on Facebook at Discography Discussion and on Twitter at discussmetal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out and it lets us know you are listening. If you are a subscriber, or even if you just caught this by accident on YouTube or even on iTunes, leave us a review. Give us that 5 stars, give us a thumbs up, and give us some comments because we like hearing from you guys. We had a suggestion a few weeks ago to listen to the band Intronaut. Needless to say, I have been prepping for that, and that's going to be coming out really soon in the future. And Dan, I know we got something special coming up in a few weeks. We want to talk about that now or save it for later?
We're going to talk about Pantera in a few weeks, and it has come out over time that some people, a lot of people, most people,
Dan,
disagree with me on a few things about Pantera. And so we're going to have an episode that is going to set the record straight on Pantera. I'm going to give my opinion, the correct opinion, and everybody is going to more or less try to explain to me why I am wrong.
And we have been working very hard.
I don't know about that.
We have been working very hard to get some competition, as it were, and we got some surprises coming up as far as that is concerned, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I think Dan and I might have to tag team on that one. I can't leave them all by lonesome.
Sounds good to me, man. Can't let a fat guy get taken advantage of by a whole bunch of other dudes.
Yeah.
So, it's going to happen. But, so check out the Pantera episode when it comes out. We'll be running promos for it for a couple weeks leading up to it. It'll be kind of one of our more fun episodes to do. So, definitely check that out.
Ooh, good song.
Haste the Day.
Yeah.
2004.
Burning Bridges. I'm not sure this is the first album I ever heard, but it's definitely an album cover that rings a bell.
So I had listened to Haste Today. Like I knew about them whenever I read because I used to be on like the Solid State mail, like email list and all that. So I kind of got the down low on Haste Today as soon as they were signed to Solid State Records, and so I had listened to a couple of tracks off of an EP that they had, which was called "That They May Know You," and it's an independent EP. It's got about 7 songs on it. It's got a few of the tracks off of Burning Bridges on it. And, like the first thing I noticed about Haste Today, dude, do you think they listen to Zao much?
I know their lead singer does.
Yeah, no kidding.
So this was a time period where Zao was kind of becoming a big deal again. They had been around since '97 and had been making metalcore before that, but the thing about Zao was that they had disappeared for a while and they'd come back around 2004 at that time, and
it was right around the release of The Funeral of God.
Yeah, it was not far away from that, and this was actually when Zao had parted ways with Solid State Records. So I can kind of see it there at Solid State. They're sitting there thinking,
how are we going to fill the void?
How are we going to fill the void? We need something like this. And at that time, there was no shortage. Between 2000 and 2004, there were no shortages of bands that had lead singers like this,
or bands that were derivative of As I Lay Dying.
Right. So what you get with Haste Today on this first record is, and I don't think that they sound like As I Lay Dying necessarily. The music also doesn't really sound like Zao, just the vocalist, really.
Right, definitely.
This guy named Jimmy Ryan sang for Haste Today for their first 2 albums, and he had that snarling, growling vocal that like almost in a lot of ways kind of contrasted with the rest of the music, which was for metalcore, it was actually pretty positive sounding. It was very upbeat.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked them quite a bit. Even though I like metal, I like happy music too.
Right, it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it really was.
And
the vocals, like you said, was real interesting contrast. I actually hadn't heard Zao yet.
Yeah,
I heard these guys first, and I always thought the vocals were kind of weird to me. Like
different.
That whole like raspy whisper kind of overtone to his vocals.
Serpentine.
Yeah, like he's hissing almost.
Sure, yeah. And he is, absolutely.
Yeah. But the more you listen to it, the more you kind of like it. It's kind of an addiction, I guess. I don't know.
We were at Cornerstone in 04, and I remember we were seeing a band called Blaster the Rocket Man. And that was when Haste Today was huge. So they were playing, I think they played 3 or 4 times at that Cornerstone that year.
Couple generator stages.
I don't think they played Generator because they were solid state. They definitely played on Tooth and Nail Day, and they knocked it out of the park. It was funny when we were seeing this band called Blaster the Rocket Man. He was telling me like how he's like just a couple of years ago we'd walk past tents and all we would hear is like ska, or all we'd hear is like Korn sounding stuff.
What's wrong with ska?
And he goes, but when I walk past tents now, I walk past the tent and all I hear is coming out of all the tents because it's the strangest thing in the world. And like it was clearly talking about Haste Today. I think Zale played that year too. I remember getting my ribs hurt pretty bad during that, and it was like a big deal at the time, and Haste Today, really they carried that torch, I think, for Solid State as being like that serpentine, growly, screamy band, and but Haste Today, their music was a little bit more mainstream, I think, as mainstream as this kind of music can be.
Right.
It wasn't like Killswitch Engage. I don't think that the clean singing, like your la 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 clean singing, was as good as some of the other bands that were out at that time, but
that I agree with.
But with Haste Today, what you had more of like this mainstream rock sound to the singing, to the clean singing anyway. So you had these Zao vocals that were the main vocal, and then in between, scattered in, you had this clean singing, which sounded a lot like there was this band that was pretty popular at that time called 12 Stones, and so it kind of has a little bit of this like more mainstream rock, like kind of like this butt rock sound a little bit. But for some reason, it didn't bother me with Haste Today. Like it was like, yeah, they've got the spirit of metal, but like the spirit of hard rock at the same time.
This was that year, 2004, that was kind of awkward for metalheads, hard rock fans, etc. Because this is when the emo started kind of invading.
Right. And
you had your leftovers from In Flames, which, we've said before on the In Flames podcast, a lot of people were ripping off As I Lay Dying, who ripped off In Flames.
Sure.
So you kind of have this collage of styles and collage of influences that it was still, I'm gonna use the word manly. It wasn't quite, full on butt rock, but
it wasn't whining.
It was we're still manly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you guys know what 12 Stones is really famous for?
What's that? Oh, that Evanescence song that the guy was on? Yeah, sure,
the lead
sure.
singer.
Yeah,
that's, so if anybody's wondered, where did I know the name 12 Stones from? That's what it's from.
So, the Haste Today had this they had this melodic edge, but they were also very hard, obviously, and it's really strange to me too with Haste Today how with their kind of focus on being a little bit more poppy, a little bit more accessible. It was strange to me, like the choice of vocalist, of screaming vocalist, because that serpentine growling vocal, I don't really hear it much anymore. I mean, it seemed like it was really big. Again, like I said, between 2000 and 2004.
Yeah, I like the contrast.
And again, that was 100% Zao. That kind of everybody listened to Blood and Fire and thought, you know what, I want to do that too. So you can hear that a lot, and
that's exactly what I hear on this record.
Oh yeah. On this one especially, I remember thinking like, wow, dude, it's like it's kind of like 12 Stones, but like with the vocalist from Zayo, you know, like it was weird, you know, but it was cool. And musically, Haste Today was very upbeat. They didn't play like a whole lot of like negative sounding, like slower songs. They weren't like the Dissonance band, you know, because at that time too, like bands like Norma Jean were like really getting big. And
this was when the guitar solo was making its way out. And what followed, and it took about 5 or 6 years for the guitar solo to come back. But this was that year, for those that remember. It's when the riffs were still heavy, but you weren't getting any...
It was all breakdowns, man.
It was all about the breakdowns.
It was, and it was weird too, like going back to that time, you know, like 11 years ago, or 12 years ago, or however many years ago it was. 13 years, yeah, I'm getting old. But, you know, that was still okay. Like, I wasn't listening to records being like, oh my God, they got breakdowns, like, this is going to be core or whatever. Like, I definitely got sick of metalcore, but it was like 8 or 9 years after this, you know. This
was before the breakdown became annoying. This was when the breakdown was still kind of fresh.
Yeah, it was. And the cool thing about Haste Today was that, like, you know, before this, I mean, you didn't really have the singing, like the rock singing in there, and it was before that. It was more focused on chaos and kind of just the whole like, oh my God, look at how heavy we are, look at how, you know, extreme our stuff is, and so like Haste Today kind of comes along with this more like it's gonna be positive, like it's gonna be heavy, it's gonna be straightforward, but it's gonna be like you're gonna feel good about it after you're done listening to it. And that was new. I mean, I think Demon Hunter had come out with their first album around this time, and it was kind of the same kind of thing. Except Demon Hunter even sounded like way more negative than this. Like this was pure, I guess, so to speak. It was pure positivity, you know. And it's not something that we really get in metal very much. And so I think that's what made it unique. Is that like it's not that Haste Today was unique musically on Burning Bridges. I heard a lot of different influences on this record. I mean, I remember being in the car with Buddy, and we listened to. He bought Burning Bridges and popped that in, and we listened to it all the way through while we were dropping people off from school. Because for some reason, Buddy drove like everybody home from school, and he dropped me off last, you know, so I could listen to as much music as possible during that time. And we listened to Burning Bridges, and I remember us thinking like, man, this is you know, like I hear Zayo in it. I hear, you know, a little bit of Adelaide Dying. I hear a little bit of that like Gothenburg sound. But the cool thing about Haste Today, they never really capitalized on that Gothenburg sound like a lot of the other metalcore bands were. And that's kind of what, like, it's almost like, especially in these early records, they kind of focus more on the hardcore than they did on the like melodic death metal aspect of it. And through that, like, again, not being like the most original band starting out, they still kind of carved this sound out that was very unique to them. And what was weird is because I can still hear it, like their latest record, Coward, is like a combination of old Haste Today and new Haste Today. And there's a couple of songs on the new record that are written and performed completely by the old lineup of Haste Today. And it still sounds like it. I think the song Accept is the best one to, you know, like that classic Haste Today sound. And so in that regard, they kind of were original in that they put the puzzle pieces together in such a way that it reflected them and not so much what it was influenced by. And that was really hard to do at this time because the market was so oversaturated with bands that all sounded like each other.
Coward is definitely a spoiler in that. One thing about Haste Today that you will see that was very common amongst bands that were around in this era, the way they start and the way they finish, they don't sound the same. However, Haste Today, for a very special reason, is kind of a different exception to the rule, if you know what I mean there, Dan.
Yeah, they came back around.
They did. And it was good. Like they never had that album. The one where you're listening to it and you're like, what the hell were they thinking?
My example would be if Metallica from 1985 made a record with Metallica from 1995 and nobody complained. Well, that's pretty much Coward, but we'll get to Coward a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that towards the end, but Burning Bridges was a huge record for Haste Today. Like, oh my God. Like, it cemented the band immediately in the eyes of fans. And I saw them a couple of times play that material, and it was very energetic. Jimmy Ryan was a super energetic vocalist. He was a likable guy. Haste Today was also really famous for, at that time, letting the audience sing along to everything. There was a song called American Love off of Burning Bridges that at the very end has a really long kind of extended out melodic vocal section. And it was not unusual. I mean, every time I would go to see them, they would invite like half the fans up on the stage to sing that song with them. And that was different. And I remember screaming my lungs out watching them play one night, and Jimmy Ryan kept putting the vocal mic in my face, and I'd scream along with it, as best I could. And then at the end of the show, he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey man, thanks a lot for helping me sing tonight. It was awesome." And that was just like a really special moment, between bands and a band and fans.
Yeah, that'll definitely make it memorable.
Yeah, and even at that time, I was kind of starting to want to listen to stuff that was more original, but because of that experience with Haste Today, I really they were always important to me, even when they shouldn't have been. And that was what kept me going throughout all that time, because on paper it doesn't seem like the kind of band I would like, but they won me over, man. And that's all you need to do is win somebody over. So obviously Burning Bridges was a huge success. So they followed up with an album called When Everything Falls. And this was kind of more of the same.
I agree on that one.
In a good way.
Yeah, it's not like it's bad.
It's not bad. It's still definitely, in my book, the worst Haste Today album. But not like in a it sucks kind of way.
For those fans that exist that their expectation of the next album is going to be the previous album only taken a step further.
It's not that.
It's not that.
It's
but
the previous album with the step back.
Yeah,
a little bit. It more of a focus on the mainstream.
It was a good attempt at trying to do the same thing again. Like, let's write more songs that sound the same to what we did before that everybody liked.
Well, like we've said a lot of times, too, you have your whole life to write your first album.
I believe that was your analysis many years ago.
Yeah, you have a number of years to write that first record and to write all the songs and create kind of the sound for yourself. And then it's like, holy shit,
you got 10 months.
Yeah, it's like, holy shit, this is great, but you have less than a year now to write another one.
And we're going to bring some people in to help you.
Right. So the production quality was upped a little bit.
Yeah.
One of my complaints about Burning Bridges is the drums do not exist on that record.
You got them here.
Yeah, you can hear everything now, crystal clear. And there was a lot more singing on this, a lot more melodic singing than what we'd had on Burning Bridges. But again, this wasn't really like the band is compromising their sound. It's more like, okay, guys, what did people like about Burning Bridges? They liked the singing. They liked, they liked kind of the more solo-y. They got a little bit, the guitar work got a little bit more complicated on When Everything Falls. And it all sounds really good. The only real complaint I have with it is that it all kind of sounds the same. When Everything Falls is not a very dynamic record in the sense that, if you listen to a song individually off of it, you'll like it. But when you listen to the record as a whole, everything kind of blends together.
And that is a definition of not a good record.
Well, it's a safe record, I think.
Right, I don't think anybody walked away from the band on When Everything Falls.
I just think, they got a record deal.
Right.
Looking for more of the same. I mean, and look, it sold well for what it was. So.
Well, yeah, they had great songs on there. They had the Perfect Night. They had Walk On, When Everything Falls. They had Walls and Fear. Those are all really classic Haste Today songs. They didn't mess it up, They didn't compromise really a whole lot.
This is the band that toured on Burning Bridges and just tried to make more of that.
Right.
Which is fine, I think.
Jimmy Ryan's vocals are mixed weird on this record, too, though, because, they're harder to understand than they were on Burning Bridges. And I can only imagine the type of pain that he must have been going through after like a good year of touring on this. I mean, you're in a band, you scream or whatever. If you're doing it right, you're not going to lose your voice. It's not going to be a big deal. But I think that here it was probably more intense than it was before Burning Bridges came out. I think before you're signed to a major label, you play out a lot, but it's not like it is on a consistent tour schedule. So, you're pumping this shit out like every night. And with that type of screaming, it's got to be pretty rough on the old vocal cords after a while. So, I mean, I almost feel like the vocals on this are a little bit less focused than they were on Burning Bridges. But again, that could all 100% be based on the recording. And it could all be based on just how they decided to mix it, There's one black mark on this record.
And what is that?
Not on the record itself. So I'm at Cornerstone one year, and I'm watching As I Lay Dying, and I'm watching As Cities Burn, and I'm watching all these bands play on main stage of all places at Cornerstone, which was big. They had like a hardcore night. We saw like Norma Jean and As I Lay Dying, and like Under Oath played at the very end. I mean, it was what you'd want if you're a big Solid State guy. It's perfect lineup. However, this video comes on the main screen of When Everything Falls. And now this was before the record had come out, so we didn't know what When Everything Falls is going to sound like. I didn't even know Haste Today had a new record coming out. Because, I mean, I had internet in 2005, 2006, but, like...
This is pre-high speed.
It wasn't what it is now, So, like, I didn't really know that they had a new record coming out. So there's this video for When Everything Falls that they play on the main screen at Cornerstone. And the first thing I noticed was that, like, the raspy screaming is way dialed back. Like, it's almost like it doesn't exist. Like Jimmy Ryan is shouting the vocals in like an old school hardcore kind of way, but it's mostly like they cut the entire intro out of the song. It just goes right in on the video, and you can actually still watch this original video. You can still watch it on YouTube. It's still there. But I remember being like, "Oh my God, they've completely taken the soul out of this. Like, where's the Zao screaming? Where's the, where's the intensity there? It's like this melodic rock song.
It's
with
been neutered.
With like a little bit of screaming on it. It's like completely neutered and chopped up, and it definitely gave me a bad first impression of the record. But then you buy the record and you listen to that song, and there's this huge intro on the song, and it's screamed, perfectly just like it was on Burning Bridges all the way through. And I remember being like, what the hell? Like, did they make that video in order to fool people into thinking that Haste Today didn't sound like what they sounded like?
I've noticed that happens a lot in all forms of metal or heavy music when they're trying to fool the audience into buying a record that might be a little bit outside of your demographic. One example that comes to mind, there's a band from, and I'm going to get the country wrong. There's a band called Avatar. They have a song called Smells Like a Freak Show.
Okay.
I discovered this band because they had an album called The Black Waltz, which came up in my library under the Black Parade.
Okay.
And I started listening to it, and I liked how they did it. It was a little kind of, it wasn't circus music on purpose, but it kind of had that feel. And the vocals were kind of whispery, and then there was these singing parts, but it's that European metal singing where they clearly have an accent, but they're still going with it. And I thought, this is kind of cool. So I start listening to it more and more. I'm like, I'm going to look the album up. Pull the album up. Vocals are not the same. And there's no single edit. There's nothing that you can find that's like, okay, where's that version of the song? I mean, it's literally the difference between growled and whispered.
Right, and everybody's afraid to put that growl on there because everybody's going to be like, oh, God, I don't want to listen to that because that sounds like Satan or whatever.
And for you, I would say the example would be if they took insert Zao song and just made the vocals whispered instead of growled and said, this is our lead single, we're making a video around this.
Right, luckily they never did that.
Clearly not representing the band as a whole.
No, well, that video for When Everything Falls looks so stupid because, like,
What, because he's screaming his heart out and you can barely fucking hear him?
Well, not only that, but like Jimmy Ryan's standing there like not doing anything for the majority of the video. So I don't know if this is like the band that did this or if it was the label.
No, this has got to be an executive somewhere up high thinking this is a great idea and we're going to sell some.
Well, I mean, the band had to be on board at least a little bit for it, though, because they recorded
it's in their contract.
They recorded a different vocal track for the record or for the song.
Or the engineer did an alternative mix.
Yeah.
Or maybe they put that out and they got such bad backlash for it that they just were like, okay, we're going to go back and fix it. You know, nobody knows. I don't know. Maybe if we get somebody from Haste Today on the show at some point in the future, they can enlighten us.
But overall, the review of this album is it's more of the same.
Yep.
And it's nothing but the same. There's no dynamic.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Pick the song that you like and listen to it. Enjoy.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, like, at all. But it was more of the same. It was all good. And then Jimmy Ryan announces that he's leaving the band.
Maybe we know why. Maybe we do. There was actually a cover on When Everything Falls of Long Way Down by the Goo Goo Dolls, which is a cool cover. Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I think it's on the deluxe version. I don't think it's on
It sounds like Haste Today. It's cool.
Yeah.
Works out.
I don't think that's on the original, though, is it? Or
It is. Yeah, it's on the original.
I couldn't remember.
Mm-hmm. And, so Pressure the Hinges come out. Well, before that, there was this extensive search for a vocalist.
So please tell this story because it entertains me every time you do.
Dan Terry may have submitted a demo tape.
He's not lying.
I did not live anywhere near them, so that's the thing. But so I did submit a demo tape, and it's funny because I screamed like I normally scream, which is more of like a deeper register, not so much like a growl like Zayo. But anyway, they ended up getting this guy named Stephen Keach that also screams in a lower register, more of like what you would be getting out of like As I Lay Dying or a lot of the hardcore bands. There's like kind of almost like a little bit of a Poison the Well. He sounds a lot like the guy that they had in From Autumn to Ashes for a little while. Just like a deeper, bassier vocalist that could actually sing too, which was a big thing. I remember them putting on the original ad for "We're looking for a vocalist" is we want somebody that can scream but also sing. That was like a big deal because before Jimmy Ryan didn't do the singing on Burning Bridges, he didn't do the singing on When Everything Falls. It was the guitarist that did that rocky, more rock style singing. So with this new vocalist in tow, they released a record called Pressure the Hinges. And this was a big turning point for the band. First of all, they were immensely popular at this point, at least as far as like metalcore and stuff goes. I don't know how much they were taking home every week from it, but what you get with Pressure the Hinges is a much more melodic Haste Today, if that's possible. I mean, sure. I mean, When Everything Falls was melodic, and Burning Bridges was melodic, but this was different. The vocalist change kind of made it sound almost like a different band. But oh man, was the production level on this like in a different stratosphere?
Yeah, it was top
than
notch,
what you had with the other stuff. I mean, the breakdowns are so big on this. And it can't be understated. I mean, I know like metal guys aren't supposed to talk about breakdowns. It's a sin or whatever. But like, this is crazy because this record somehow ended up being more melodic, but also heavier than When Everything Falls. And I still to this day, I don't really know how they pulled it off. But the song Pressure the Hinges is just so good. And you now have the singing that you'd heard on Haste the Day prior. It's like the only recognizable part of the band at this point. But then you have this other singer that's also singing now. And Stephen Keach actually sang more in the emo He didn't whine, but he sang in more of the higher pitched emo register.
It was more forward.
This was 2007.
Right. So this added a lot to the band, though, I think.
Yeah, this was actually the first album I heard.
They could not have picked a better vocalist.
Oh,
You know what I mean? To pick up the torch. I mean, he sounded great. You know, I mean, sure, back in 2007, it should have been me. But you know, but I mean, this was great.
damn right, it should have been you.
Probably not. But anyway, so they had this great dynamic vocalist that could sing and scream, and they really, I mean, the lyrics were different. Like, that was the big thing for me, is that, you know, obviously Stephen Keach writes different types of lyrics than Jimmy Ryan wrote. And so I kind of got a more, like, with Haste the Day prior, like, I mean, Jimmy Ryan obviously wrote personal lyrics, and they were great, and they worked great with the songs. So, like, I guess what it comes out to is I'm trying to praise this record without diminishing what was done prior, you know? There's nothing wrong with the first two Haste Today records, but
This is the band moving forward.
this is something else. This is something new, and this is cool. This was a breath of fresh air. I like the screaming. I like the guttural. I mean, this dude gets crazy guttural. I mean, he's just like, he's in the pocket. He sounds awesome. And he really extends those breakdowns so well. But his voice also is dynamic, so it actually adds a lot more emotion to what's being sang. Because growling, screaming vocals, you know, in like the higher raspy register, don't always come across as emotional. They come across as metal. This was different. This was a more personal sounding record from Haste Today. I got nothing bad to say about it. It was absolutely the change that they needed. I mean, if they had put out When Everything Falls Part 2, I don't think we'd be talking about them. I don't think that they'd be notable like they are now.
Well, we'd be talking about them, just they wouldn't be quite as high on the list. It would be much further down the road, I'd say.
It'd be one of those, like, Dan wants to talk about him because the guy sounds like Zayo, you know? But, like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that we would have done it just because of that. But
Right. That was my attraction.
Yeah.
Originally.
Yep.
So is this the definitive Haste the Day record?
I think it is. I mean, as far as the way the band sounds now, I mean, Stephen Keach is, you know, again, like we say this all the time, but, you know, for being a new vocalist, he became the band. He became the driving force, in my opinion, because you get 3 or 4 albums down the road and everybody else is gone except him. But he keeps it all together. He keeps it all consistent.
So don't answer this question yet if you can't. So why is When Everything Falls the worst?
It's only the worst because the songs aren't as interesting.
They're not dynamic.
Whereas with everything, with Pressure the Hinges, the songs stand apart from one another.
Yeah, like my introduction to them was Stitches. Like, that was the first time I ever heard them.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed because I was like, wow, this guy's got nice, good, clean singing. And, man, he can fucking growl, too. I was like, man, this guy's...
He's got
good.
it all. He's got it.
I was like, wow, this is what I like when I'm looking for a band. I want somebody that has that kind of range. Vocals, for me, are really, really important. Not necessarily the lyrics themselves, but like what Dan was talking about earlier, it's the emotion, the feeling in the voice. And
you should read the lyrics with it, man. It's really good.
yeah, I mean, the lyrics are good. I mean, and I know how important lyrics are for you, but trying to get the vibe off the guy who's singing, or gal if it's a female, or anybody in between, I don't care. But I'm just looking for that emotion. I'm looking for that feeling.
Sure.
And dude, he's got it. And the harmonies are good too, you know, with the vocals. I like vocal harmonies in metal. I think it adds a really cool dynamic. And it's something I always look for.
He mixes really well with the previous clean singers in the band.
And that was the other thing. I think, you know, that we're talking about it. That was probably one of the things looking backwards that for me was kind of a challenge was, you know, the clean singing just didn't cut it for me on the first 2 albums.
something was missing, and this was what was missing.
Exactly.
Stephen Keach was missing. You know,
exactly.
And they knew it. They knew it. That's why they asked for a singer. They didn't want somebody that just screamed. They wanted somebody that could sing too.
Yeah,
and that was was not me. You know,
in that instance, sorry Dan, but I think they made a great choice. Even though I said you should be on.
Dude, they made the best choice. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing. Yeah, I'm not.
This really is a great album.
Me sending a demo tape is just a funny tidbit. It's not like anything. They got hundreds of demo tapes. They're not even going to remember that, And
of course, we're going to back you because you're our bud. So I mean,
sure, why not?
Absolutely,
why not? But yeah, like it's just an interesting tidbit. But they could not have done a better job than they did here, and it was weird too because like I loved the Zao singing so much on the first two records, but they did such a good job of keeping me on board as a fan. Because, I mean, you could say that this is more mainstream.
Well, that's like what we talked. We've kind of beat it to death. But when you're gonna make a change, you damn well better be a good change, and you better damn well be sure that it's you're doing it right.
You're doing the old sound justice, but you're moving forward.
Right, and I think that's what gets people on board, and that's what keeps people in the long run. Well, I mean, I guess to a certain extent, I know the metal community, they always want, to a certain extent, more of the same. But if you can give them more of the same with the twist, and then you're going to get them hooked.
Well, and do you think that, like, maybe it was also the change in that, like, the guttural screaming, the lower register stuff is a little bit more accepted in hardcore and in metal than the raspy scream?
Yeah, I think so. I
think there were people that probably didn't like Haste Today originally just because of that.
I would say from a popularity standpoint, the raspy scream will never be popular.
It's never going to be like sold out stadiums kind of popular, and
it's not.
But this can be, and it's not like As I Lay Dying didn't rasp. I mean, if you look at As I Lay Dying's first record, between the what is Beneath the Encasing of Ashes, it sounds like a straight Zao ripoff. It sounds just like Zao.
Or what is it? Kill Switch Engage.
Kill Switch Engage. They do the higher screams, the rasps, and all that. But they did it. But they coupled it with like beautiful melodic singing, and Haste Today tried to do that as well. I don't know if I would describe their melodic singing as beautiful necessarily, but it got the job done, and I think it kept people interested in the band that maybe weren't on board with the raspy screams. But I think this was such a good choice for them creatively because people are more willing to accept a guy that screams, not a guy that growls like an animal.
Absolutely.
And so again, this was it. This was the perfect combination of that. And then they, whenever they put out Dreamer a few years later, shit, man, they do it again. I was a really big fan of Dreamer from the very first 3 seconds of it that I heard.
I was about to tell you that way to review the album in one sentence.
Yeah, because I read a lot of negative reviews on Dreamer. People thought that it wasn't as good as Pressure the Hinges. And they're right. It's not as good of a record as Pressure the Hinges was. But Keach does a lot more singing on Pressure the Hinges. The other guys are still there, but like it's on Pressure the Hinges, it's all Keach. Like he really takes it by the balls on this one. And the first song that's on the record, 68, is just like such a good, because I was worried when I was reading the reviews. They're like, it's more melodic and it's more mainstream sounding, and it's like another When Everything Falls, and it's not as inspired sounding, and blah 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 blah. Till you hear that the first few seconds of that song, I am the one you will call the destroyer. It's just like so fucking hard, man. Like they're pissed off sounding. Like, I mean, the Pressure of the Hinges sounded angry too, but like this is like pissed off. Like they're mad about something. There's like, like a reviewer described Haste Today as vanilla ice cream. And this is like vanilla ice cream with like fucking chocolate chunks in it. Like they're pissed about something, and it all goes down really smooth, and it sounds good.
Mainstream, yes. This is when Kill Switch Engage was mainstream. This is when everybody was ripping off As I Lay Dying.
Right, and this is, I mean,
And
if you
Haste the Day just kind of drove up next to him like, guys, we've been doing this the whole time. Where you been?
Yeah, and like if you listen to the first riff on 68, I mean it's mellow death. It's Gothenburg, you know. It's something they hadn't really done like full on really before, but I didn't care. It just sounded so good. He just sounded so angry, and it was everything you'd want out of a good metal song. And so at that point, I was on board, and they did it again a few other times. There's a song called Babylon, which is just
that's my
really,
favorite track
really
on this
heavy.
one.
But I think what people didn't like about Dreamer was that I think at this particular point they were down a guitarist, and for some reason every time a guitarist leaves a metal band, everybody says it's going to be shit now.
And in most cases, they're right.
Yeah, like In Flames, but you know,
Or Korn.
or Korn. You're right. But like, there's a song called "An Adult Tree," which like pissed everybody off. Which like is very melodic. There's some screaming in it, but it's like a mostly like singing led, like a song that's led by singing, and the singing kind of goes with it throughout. And I really love that song. I thought it was great. I had nothing bad to say about Dreamer. It's a record that's a guilty pleasure for me because I'm like, I guess I'm not supposed to like it because it's mainstream and it sounds almost like a distilled version of what we'd had on Pressure the Hinges. The production doesn't sound quite as big as it did on Pressure the Hinges, but I think all in all, I mean, there's a lot of passion in this record, and there's a lot of heartfelt emotion there.
Haste the Day is the exception for me when it comes to, and you have to be clear with those people. This is 2008.
Right.
This is the end of the 2000s, early 20 teens. This is when Mainstream was a group like Killswitch Engage that ripped off two other metal bands, your third generation ripoff. Yes, it's Mainstream. And if your complaint is that Haste the Day showed up at the Mainstream party, this is just like it's like when Green Day made Dookie and everybody said it's too poppy, there's no punk. It's like, guys, these guys have been punk forever. They're just better songwriters than you. So this always struck me as Haste the Day saying, if this is Mainstream, we can do this too. It's not that we're changing what we're doing to do it. It's just, yeah, you guys are in the same pool with us. Come on.
Right, like we're still metalcore, and we're okay with that.
We can hang.
There's nothing wrong with it. And they're defending it. They're, like Jeff said, there's like a standard bearer. Like, you know what? Yeah, we get it. Everybody hates metalcore now, but you know what? We're really fucking good at it.
We're just gonna keep going,
and we're not doing anything that's like drastically different. We're not playing some distilled, watered down version of what we played before. And this is still very pissed off. And I remember people commenting that it wasn't, it was hypocritical because in a lot of ways it wasn't as melodic as Pressure the Hinges. It was more straight ahead. There was more breakdowns. It was more like the old Haste today, in a lot of ways. But you had all this new stuff, going on too. You had Keach in there, he's screaming, and you're doing yourself a disservice too if you don't go back and watch live videos of Stephen Keach playing the old Haste today songs. Because oh my God, does he do a good job on them? Like, I mean, it's seamless. You'd go see the band. At this point they're like what 1, 2, 3, 4 albums in, so they've got like this huge back catalog of stuff to play, and it was always a really dynamic, really intense live show, and he could pull it all off. He could pull everything off. He could pull off everything off the first 2 records. He could pull off everything on the new stuff. Obviously, the songs were really they stood out from one another, and they to me they had not committed any sins. This was exactly, I mean, like, okay, this is exactly what I expected out of the band, I guess. And a lot of people say that's a bad thing, like they're not moving forward necessarily, but there's also this double-edged sword metal that, like, you do something different and everybody fucking hates you, but you do the same thing over and over again and everybody fucking hates you. So it's like, why not just play on our strengths, keep the people that were interested before still interested, and just go with that. There's no shame in that, because again, I like to make money.
Yeah, like I said, you find the formula, and you want more of the same, but with a twist. I mean, that's really what people are looking for. They don't want it to change too much.
Right.
But it's got to change enough to keep their interest, but you still got to stay enough in your roots that, it doesn't sound completely different.
Yeah, and there's nothing on Dreamer that I'm like, oh my God, this is just, I can't believe they would do this to me. Because again, it's all personal, right? It's something they're doing to me. But, that's Dreamer is just another good Haste Today record. It's the only negative thing that I could say about it. Is that it's another it's another good Haste Today record, and I don't have too much. I mean, there's people that still say that it sucks or whatever, but those people, they can, whatever. Like, they can go back and listen to, when everything falls. Like, if that's their jam.
Are you ready for the Wolf King?
Oh, I am so ready for the Wolf King. So, but there's an interesting story about Haste Today. So, like, by the time we get to Wolf King,
Attack of the Wolf King, 2010.
Right, so by the time we get to Attack of the Wolf King, everyone's gone. Except for Keach. He's still fucking, all right, we're going to keep this going. As long as my voice is on, it's still Haste Today, baby. So, he goes for it. Gets a whole bunch of new guys in. So this is one of those unique situations where you've got the old Haste Today and the new Haste Today. And they're two completely separate entities at this point.
Officially.
Right. So somebody gets it in their head, you know what would be really cool? If we played a concert together with the old band and the new band. And they did it. And they called it Haste Today versus Haste Today.
This was in 2011?
This was the CD release party for Attack of the Wolf King. Okay? And they did it, man. They'd get up there and they'd play the new songs. And then at some point they'd all disappear. And the old band would come up and pick up the guitars and get behind the drum set. And they'd play the old Haste Today songs. Which culminated at the very end with the song When Everything Falls, where it was everybody up on stage playing at the same time. And this is unique just in the sense that most bands can't swallow their own pride enough to do something like this. This is completely unique as far as I know. If another band has done it, great, but this was the first time I ever heard anything like this. Stephen Keach is up on stage and he's like, thanks for coming and seeing us. We're Haste Today, but you guys know what's coming. Do you guys want to hear Jimmy scream some songs tonight? And everyone's like, yeah. He's like, good, me too. And so they all go out, and you don't see that. Usually when bands have member changes, it's due to deep personal stress or deep personal hatred that they have for each other. Haste Today, whether that stuff existed or not, I'm not aware of if it did or didn't, but they were able to somehow pull it all together and just do this amazing concert that was a love letter to the fans, and everybody loved it. And it's great, hearing all these new songs being played from previous records and some off of Wolf King. But the best part of it was that they would get, all of a sudden they're like, all right, guys, we're going to do Blue 42 off of Burning Bridges. And Jimmy gets up there and starts singing, and he's like making fun of the fact that he's fat now and, all this, which I can relate to in a big way. But, he...
Pun intended.
But he sounds great. He sounds just like he did on the old stuff. And I got a really good positive vibe off of it. But let's ignore all that shit for a minute. And we're going to go back to Wolf King.
Man, did I love this album. I did.
It was different.
Yeah, but it was different done right, man. The clean vocals, the notes that are being hit.
Yeah, and this is all Keach.
Damn. That's all I can say.
This is all Keach. We've seen him grow now from Pressure the Hinges till now.
I loved Pressure the Hinges. That's my favorite album. But he grew as a vocalist on this. Holy shit, the notes that he's hitting, I did not realize the dude could hit some of the stuff that he was hitting. I was like, my God, I could sing along for the most part with the other stuff, but no, I gotta enjoy this because there's no way I can sing this stuff. It's just he's way too high in the register for me. Well, it's insane.
And I feel like there was a lot of more focus on this of just making a great record, more so than there was like we got to keep the Haste Today machine rolling. We got to keep everybody on board. And I mean, obviously, if you like the band, you're going to be on board with this anyway. The songs are still heavy. This record is much more melodic, I think, than Dreamer was. Dreamer was really pissed off, and this was a lot less angry sounding, but beautiful sounding in its own way. And the screams are still intense. They still cut you. The singing is just phenomenal. And at this point, you can make no mistake about who the vocalist of this band is.
Right.
If you're that guy that's like, oh, it just all went to shit after Jimmy Ryan left, dude, I guess that's fine or whatever. But like, he commented. I was reading an interview with Stephen Keach on Indie Vision Music, and he was saying how like everybody still calls him the new vocalist, and he's like, dude, I've been in the band for over 10 years at this point, and he's been on more records than Jimmy Ryan has been on. So like,
all right, Dan, go find your phone and look up the text that I sent you. Do you remember what I sent you?
Oh, it's over there on the other side of the room.
All right, hold on, I got
read it.
Yeah, let's see if I can find it. You should talk some shit in the meantime.
Oh, I don't have any shit to talk on this band. This isn't In Flames, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Haste today. You can criticize them, I guess, for being mainstream or whatever, but like, I think that's pretty petty to insult a band for what they are, and for most part for what they have always been. They're a good introduction to metalcore if you're not into that style. I don't know, man. It's just I
don't know. I can't find it. Anyway, all I said is that I like the new singer better. I said something like that to you.
Right, and I think I told you were a piece of shit or something.
Yeah, but he's right. Everybody just views him as the new singer, and it doesn't mean that like he's new. He's just newer than Jimmy, and that's all that.
I think when people say Haste today, I think they remember how the band sounded before.
Right. And I even started with Pressure the Hinges. So I still call him the new singer.
Right.
Even though he was who I was introduced with. It's not that I mean it like that. But it's not very often that you go through with a successful band, that's around for over a decade and have a singer change and still be successful.
Right. And I think he took this, again, like I said before, he took it by the balls. He really,
Yeah, I think they actually...
He owned it in every sense of the word.
They actually got more successful once he joined the band. From a monetary standpoint.
Even look at a band like Under Oath, who had a singer change.
Right.
Now, granted, they were a little different in that they became much more immensely popular after getting the new singer. But like you even look at like Under Oath or even Zao, like... No, not so much with Zao, but like with Under Oath, like the new singer still tried to sound like the old singer, at least on the first record that he was on. With Haste Today, he just was like, this is what I do, this is what I sound like, and this is what I'm going to go with, and this is what you're going to get from now on, And he owned it in such a way that I really don't see a lot with vocalist switches. He killed it. You even look at like Norma Jean, like, with Norma Jean, the new singer, really... he changed over time what the band sounded like, but you go back to his first record with the band, and he's still trying to sound more or less like the old singer.
Well, I guess maybe that's what I'm trying to get at. It's just like, the dynamic vocal stylings. It's a different dynamic, and it'd still be successful from album to album.
Right, nobody's sitting there with a clipboard and it's all like, well, that didn't really sound like,
that's not the sound exactly that we're looking for. We need to sound more like the old guy.
Yeah, so I think it's easy, to try to sound like, they could have found at that time, when they were auditioning vocalists, it was very easy for them to find somebody that had that higher raspy register. There were thousands of people out there that were trying to do that. And I'm really glad. I don't know if Haste Today would still be as big of a thing for me if they had just another singer that was a cookie cutter copy of what they had before.
Oh, well, there's no question for me it would not be as big because Keach is the reason why I like the band as much as I do, to be truthful with you.
Sure. I get that. It's not even that like they're like the most amazing band musically, but they keep you interested in their stuff. And it's all what it should be. It's not like they're like, okay, well, Like I'm not going to criticize them because they don't sound like the Contortionists, you know, like they're not doing some like amazingly technical thing, you know, but they're doing what they've always been doing, and it's sincere and it works.
Dan, everybody should sound like the Contortionists.
No, they should not.
I know.
Because then they wouldn't be, you know,
Then they would be the Contortionists.
Didn't you ever watch The Incredibles? Once everybody's super, then nobody will be, you know?
Okay.
So, Attack of the Wolf King was basically the swan song for Haste Today. And you can kind of hear it. It's almost like they saw the writing on the wall. They're like, hey guys, at the very least, somebody was thinking this is not going to continue like it has been. It's going to fall off at some point. Everything's going to fall, so to speak. And they saw the writing on the wall, and they really didn't last too long. They toured on this record, and then that was it. Because keep in mind, this is not Haste Today on Attack the Wolf King. I mean, it is, but it's kind of like Stephen Keach and Friends.
It's a band called Haste the Day.
It says Haste Today on the cover, but it still sounds like it because Keach makes it still sound like it. But the music's different. You can tell there's different players on it. You know, the guitar players don't have the same distinct sound that they'd had on the previous record. So you can tell. You can definitely tell that there's a lineup change here. And that's okay. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But you know, at some point they had made the decision after touring on this record that they were done doing the band. And that was it. For like 5 years, that was all. And I was okay with it because I was like, dude, Attack of the Wolf King was a good record. It was a good send-off for the band. They never screwed up. You know, from this point on, they'd put out all these records and they'd never screwed up. They always put out a really good product, something that I really enjoyed, and I didn't really have any complaints with it. So I guess in 2014, they started posting online a little bit. Like I noticed that the Haste the Day Facebook page is active again, and they're talking, they're posting stuff. And there were actually concerts during this time where the old band would get together and play shows. Like the old Haste Today with Jimmy Ryan, they would just go and play a fucking Haste Today show. I never got to see any of those, but it's interesting that they would do that since there was this whole other band that had been the band before. You know, it wasn't all that different than like when Hope's Fall got back together a few years later and with the old singer, and they played a couple of shows, like, you know, reunion shows. So I thought that was really cool. Then there's this idea that starts kind of coming up on the Facebook of like, we're thinking about doing another record. It's not going to be like it was before. We're not going to be touring relentlessly on it or anything. But we're going to put out a record. But we're going to get everybody for it.
And we mean everybody.
We mean everybody. Everybody that's been a part of Haste Today up to this point that wants to do it is going to be on this record. So when this thing dropped, I actually have this on vinyl. Thank you, Brian Colson, for gifting that to me as a birthday present.
Thanks for forgetting it at my house.
Coward is phenomenal.
It's really, really good.
I'm not going to say it takes away from what the band had done before. It's actually like purely looking at it from a pure perspective, I would actually even say it's a little disjointed. It's not necessarily a collective flowing project, you know? And there's a reason for that. It's because it's literally a love letter to the fans of the band. But
that's what makes it good.
Right, because for the very first time ever, dude, there's songs on here that have Stephen Keach and Jimmy Ryan on them.
This is what happens when Haste the Day versus Haste the Day goes over so well that they all just start writing music together. Because with two exceptions, everybody is on this album in some capacity.
Pretty much. They are the band. I mean, and it's great because you have a little bit of that Wolf King sound, a little bit of that Burning Bridges sound, a little bit of that Everything Falls sound, a little bit of everything. Everything's on this record. Everybody always says, like, oh, the band's latest album's a combination of everything they've done before. But in this case, it was true. there are songs. There's a song on this record that sounds just like When Everything Falls era Haste the Day. Who would have ever thought that they were going to ever have that again? Sure, it's only one song, but
At least we got it.
at least we got it. We have it. It's the song Accept, Joe, if you have that pulled up. It sounds like classic era Haste the Day. Like 100%. You can tell it's the old band playing with Jimmy Ryan screaming on it. And I'm not upset. I'm not disappointed. Because, we talked a lot about how great Stephen Keach was and how he redefined the band and all this, but there's something nostalgic about, oh my God, this is what could have been. Had the vocalist change not happened. Yeah, it would have been more of the same, but who cares? This is cool because it wasn't. We still got 3 albums of new and interesting and cool and different, So hearing this again this many years later is really cool.
Yeah, nostalgia is not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not. It's not at all.
And what's great about this album, I think, you said it's disjointed, but it makes you go, yeah, I remember that album. I'm going to go back and listen to it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's great is you can go back and listen to what you listened to before. But sometimes whenever you get a band, and we've talked about it before, they start going downhill as time goes on.
Sure.
The great thing with this is the whole, like you said, the love letter and the fact that you can go back and listen to what your favorite era of Haste the Day was.
Right.
Because you can find it on this and then it reminds you of it and you go back to it. And it's, I can't really think of any other, album that does that that's not a greatest hits, collaboration, kind of thing.
Right. This was heartfelt. It was fan funded, number one. So this is one of the first albums where the fans kind of called the shots. They tempted us. They said, "Hey, you want to hear Jimmy Ryan and Stephen Keach go back and forth?"
Hell yeah!
Hell yeah, I want to hear that. Why wouldn't I? If I'm a fan of the band, what the hell kind of rock could you be living in? Being like, this one's the best or this one's the best, dude. Why not have both? This is great. The singing's back. Keach is still does an amazing performance. I would say the majority of the vocals on this record are still performed by Keach, which is as it should be.
Yes.
Really, because he's
the better vocalist.
He is still the face of the band. Yeah. At that extent. So if I had heard if this had been a throwback Haste the Day record, I would not have enjoyed it nearly as much as I do, because you still have those songs on there that sound like Attack of the Wolf King or that sound like Dreamer, but the icing on the cake is that on some of those songs it's still majority Keach, but then you hear Ryan screaming in there too, and it sounds so good. And I really hope that the band continues in this regard, like in 2 years. Oh my
gosh, yes.
Yeah, a couple years from now they're like, yeah, hey, you guys like Coward, we're gonna do it again. I could live on a drip feed of this forever,
Yeah,
as long as they want to do it.
Do you have a favorite song on this? Considering how much they jump around.
Well, it's a combination. I really like the song Take, which is more of a Jimmy Ryan led song, but then the song Coward, which is predominantly Keach, is just so good. And it's it's so Attack of the Wolf King, really is.
It really is, yeah. Coward and Shadow for me.
Shadow's great.
They're all great.
The song Lost is really good.
This is.
There's a few melodic interludes on this album that I like too. But this is not any less heavy than what we'd had before. This is again, man, it's a love letter. It's everything you like about Haste Today on one record. Like literally, that's what it is. But it's new songs.
I think it's pretty cool, like we talked about before, that they're humble enough to allow this to happen.
Right. Nobody would blame Keach for being like, no, I'm the singer of Haste Today. I'm singing this.
Yeah, you can't have, a massive ego and put this album out. You got to be pretty down to earth and pretty comfortable in your own skin to allow this to happen. Which is great.
Ryan had such a cult following anyway. Because, this is what shocks me is there are people that heard Haste Today and had not heard Zao, you know, and so like they didn't necessarily realize that the vocals were kind of a ripoff, you know, but like,
well, yeah, that's because when Zao first came out, you know, I mean, it's the whole digital age thing. I mean, it was the late '90s when they were putting stuff out to begin with, right? It was
like '98, So
I mean, most people at that point in time have dial-up. If you kiddos don't know what that is,
sure, yeah. So I mean, it's not, you know, you may not necessarily see it as a ripoff.
Right.
You know, I did definitely, but that didn't take away from it because that's
because you were already exposed to it. You knew what you were looking for. You know, and it's much easier to know what you're looking for in, you know, today's world just because, you know, everybody's connected, and it wasn't like that. And you know, the end of the '90s was really the end of the, you know, the pockets, you know, of everybody having their own thing. It wasn't until you know, high-speed internet really, you know, took over the world that everybody became connected, that
everybody was familiar with everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I really, I think on Coward, I think they nailed it. Actually, I remember when they were talking about putting this record out, and I was like, it's cool. I don't think it's going to be as cool as Wolf King. That's what I kept saying, you know, that it's going to be good, but it's not going to be great. And it's completely wrong. It was great. And it competes with that album for me because I still love Wolf King because, you know, in a purely traditional sense, Wolf King was still the last Haste Today record. Right. So, you know, you put something out like Coward and it's like, it is still a Haste Today record. It's still a new Haste Today record, but it's not that like primal, like putting out a new thing, you know, based on what like this, like Coward, they have two different approaches, whereas like Wolf King was more like, this is where we're at now. This is where we've pushed the sound to. And Coward is more like we're banking on the success that we'd had before. And I can't fault it for that at all. And I wanted to talk shit on it. I wanted to say that it's not, you know, it doesn't really capture or whatever, but it absolutely does in every regard. And I know the last couple of podcasts we've done have been like extremely positive, but like, it's hard sometimes talking about your favorite bands and really finding anything negative to say.
This is one of those examples where there really isn't anything negative to say, really.
Right. I mean, you can have minor gripes on certain albums. Like you can say, well, I didn't like Attack of the Wolf King because it wasn't as heavy as Dreamer. Or I didn't like Dreamer because it sounded too commercialized. Or I didn't like Pressure of the Hinges because the vocalist was different. Or whatever. You can make little arguments like that, but I don't think they really hold any weight. I think if you're like us and you kind of like metal collectively, I don't think it's really any of those are like really downsides. I mean, I've definitely fallen into the trap before of being like, well, I loved the songs on Dreamer, but I don't love the songs on Attack of the Wolf King as much. And I felt that way before because I listened to Dreamer probably more than I listened to any of the other Haste Today albums. And so it was, and it was really just so like I had no money and I couldn't buy any new records. And so that was the one that would just kind of stayed in my car, for a long time. And so I knew those songs inside and out. So there's a little bit of fear going into any new record of like, what if I don't like the songs on this as much as I like the songs on the previous record? So like, I mean, throughout their career, I had little gripes like that. But again, like standing here in 2017, like Joe said, there isn't anything to complain about really.
Oh, Haste Today is one of those near perfect metal bands. Just, it's exactly what it is, and it's good. And for the imitators, it's better than what you're doing.
Right. I mean, and it's not like, that they're like the most, like they're the greatest metal band ever, like from a technicality standpoint, or that they were even doing anything really original. But there's something to be said about taking a style, making it your own, and doing what you do better than anybody else does what you do.
Yeah, and I guess that's, what makes Keach so impressive is even after massive lineup changes, it's still good. And I guess that, I don't know if it's him or I don't know if it's somebody at the record label or their manager that's going through and finding replacement.
Right. What's the quality control on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So whoever was in charge of that, I think also should be given some kudos because
he's doing a better job than managers of really big bands do.
Yes.
I think the message that Dan wants to send in this instance is, if a band like Haste the Day can swallow their pride and have this big, amazing, super awesome live performance featuring the old band and the new band, we really want to see Zayo do it too.
It'd be interesting. I'm not that worried about it, but
if it did happen, just saying.
I'm comfortable with Zayo being what Zayo is. But yeah, so I don't know. I think Haste the Day is just... it's good, man. I really don't have to say. It's like vanilla ice cream, like that one reviewer once said all those years ago, that it's like vanilla ice cream. You know, it's not that it's like reinventing the wheel or anything, but it feels good when you eat it and it goes down nicely. That's my final thought.
You have final thoughts, Jeff?
Not really. I think we've kind of covered everything that I had to say about it. I just think like we said, they're consummate pros. They don't have huge egos, and they're able to work together, and I think that's pretty cool. I think that's that makes them unique, is being able to come out with Coward the way that they did. I think that's just so cool, and I wish that other people will look at them and do what they've done, just like how people have I don't know. Everybody's always pulling from somebody else's ideas and trying to make them their own. So somebody there's some other bands out there that have split up and gone in a million different directions, and they come back together, do something like this. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be a neat trend. That's about it.
What's your album of the week, Jeff?
Oh gosh, it's the new one from Bjorn Speedstrid's side band from Soilwork. It's called Night Flight Orchestra. It's total cheese, and I love fucking cheese. So if you like it, check it out.
Dan?
Well, because I've been listening to a lot of Haste today, I kind of stumbled on this record that I'd had for years, and I really liked. It's got Jimmy Ryan on it, and it's called Trenches, and it's like a post rock. Like if you remember the band ISIS, it's kind of like that, and it's just kind of a shame because this day and age I can't wear my ISIS t-shirts anymore because people kind of get the wrong impression. But
yeah,
but yeah, it's kind of like that, and post rock. I guess if you want to compare it to something similar to it, it would be like the band Hands. If you've ever heard Hands, it's kind of a post rock, kind of a slower, a hardcore, but still like slow and melodic and kind of heartfelt or whatever. Jimmy Ryan does some amazing vocals on that record, and so that's what I've been listening to.
And I've been listening to the new release by the Guano Apes called Offline, which if you look at it, it looks like a late 90s album cover, but it's a late 90s band who got back together and made new songs.
Well, shit, I know what I'm checking out, man. I used to love Guano Apes back in the day.
Check it out.
Nice.
Good stuff. Good recommendation.
Yeah, she was the first rock
female
that I really got into. So
I was about to say, other than Garbage, she's the first one most people can name. And no, Joan Jett doesn't count. She's punk. I was trying to get Dan incited with that statement. It didn't work.
I got to pee really bad, so.
All right.
Yeah, and I named a character from EverQuest. If you guys remember EverQuest, from the drummer from Guano Apes, Henning is his first name. So yeah, there's some nerd knowledge for you.
There's some stuff for you.
And on that note, this has been episode 19 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks, and it helps us out, and we appreciate you guys for listening. Again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.